The message from Commander Deho reached Earth in less than 12 hours. Within minutes of receiving it, alarms went off in military headquarters across human space. Admiral Sora Han was in a meeting when her aide rushed in with the report. She read it twice, her face growing darker with each word. "Get me every ship commander in the sector," she ordered. Now, Sora had been a military officer for 30 years. She had fought pirates, stopped rebellions, and protected human colonies from every threat imaginable. But she had never seen anything like this. An entire colony taken in one day. No warning, no demands. Just gone. What made it worse were the other reports that came flooding in within the next few hours. Sora stared at her screen in growing horror. New Jeju was not the first colony to disappear. It was the 13th. Over the past month, 12 other colonies had gone silent. But everyone had assumed it was equipment failure or local problems. Now they knew the truth. Someone was hunting humans. Someone was taking them. On the retribution, Mina worked without sleeping. She had the energy readings from the purple beams. She had footage of the alien ships. She compared everything to the human database of known technology. Nothing matched. These aliens were completely unknown. But then she remembered something. 3 years ago, a deep space probe had found a derelict alien object drifting between stars. Scientists had brought it back to study. The object was damaged and its systems were dead, but they had recorded strange energy patterns from it. Patterns that no one could explain. Mina pulled up the old files. Her heart began to race. The energy signatures matched. The purple beams from New Jeju had the same readings as the derelict probe. "Commander, I found something," she called to Deho. She showed him the comparison. Deho stared at the numbers. "So this probe came from whoever took our people. Do we still have it?" "It is in a research station near Mars." The scientists could not read its data files. The language was too complex. "Send them everything we have from New Jeju. Maybe now they can break the code." At the Mars research station, a young communications officer named Hyun Kang had been studying the probe for 2 years. He had tried every method to translate the alien language. Nothing worked. But when he received the new data from New Jeju, he saw patterns he had not noticed before. Hyun worked for 3 days straight. He drank coffee and ignored sleep. His eyes burned from staring at screens. But slowly, piece by piece, the alien language began to make sense. The probe had been a scout. It had been watching human colonies for years, gathering information. When he finally decoded the main file, Hyun sat back in his chair feeling sick. He read the report twice to make sure he understood correctly. Then he sent it to Admiral Sora with shaking hands. Sora read the translation in her office. The words made her blood run cold. The aliens called themselves the Collectors. They were an ancient species that had existed for thousands of years. Long ago, they had built machines to do all their work. But machines needed resources and labor. So the Collectors began taking intelligent beings from other worlds. They used them as slaves in vast factories and mining operations across the galaxy. The probe's files listed dozens of species that had been harvested over the centuries. Some were extinct now. Others had been reduced to small populations hiding in remote star systems. The Collectors did not see this as wrong. They believed they had the right to take whatever they wanted from weaker species, and now they had noticed humanity. The report described humans as perfect subjects, strong, adaptable, intelligent, and spreading rapidly across space. The probe had been watching human colonies for 3 years, studying them. The recent disappearances were tests. The Collectors were learning how to harvest humans most efficiently. The worst part came at the end of the file. The Collectors were preparing a massive fleet. Their target was Earth itself. They planned to harvest billions of humans in a single operation. The attack would come in less than 3 months. Sora called an emergency meeting with the highest military commanders and government leaders. The room fell silent as she explained what they faced. When she finished, no one spoke for a long moment. Finally, one general said, "Can we fight them? Do we have a chance?" "The probe data shows they have faster ships and more advanced technology," Sora replied. "If we try to defend Earth, we will lose. They will come, take our people, and leave. We cannot stop them." "Then what do we do?" another officer asked. Sora looked at the faces around the table. These were good people. Strong people. They had spent their lives protecting humanity. Now she was going to ask them to do something that seemed impossible. "We attack first," she said. "The probe data includes coordinates for collector facilities. One of them is a way station where they hold captured populations before shipping them to their core worlds. Our people from the missing colonies might still be there. We hit that station. We rescue our people, and we show these collectors that humans are not easy prey. The plan was risky. The way station was deep in space, far from any human worlds. If they failed, the fleet would be destroyed and Earth would be defenseless. But if they did nothing, Earth would fall anyway. Who will lead the attack? Someone asked. Commander Deho and the Retribution, Sora said. They found the evidence. They have earned the right to strike back. When Daiho received the orders, he called his senior officers together. Junho, Yuna, and Mina stood around the table as he explained the mission. The way station was heavily defended. The collectors had weapons and shields. The attack would be dangerous. This is a volunteer mission, Deho said. Anyone who wants to leave can do so. No one will think less of you. Junho spoke first. I am staying. They took those people. We are getting them back, Yuna nodded. My Marines are ready. We did not join the military to run from a fight. Mina looked at Deho with fierce determination. My sister's out there. I am not leaving without her. Over the next few days, more ships joined them. Admiral Sora assembled a task force of 20 vessels. It was not a large fleet, but it was filled with the best crews humanity had. They trained constantly, preparing for every scenario. A brilliant engineer named Taiyang Sung developed something special. He studied the collector beam technology and found a way to modify human shields to block it. The modifications were not perfect, but they would give the Marines a fighting chance when they boarded the station. Pilots trained in new tactics. The collectors had never fought a real war. They only knew how to harvest defenseless populations. Human pilots had centuries of combat experience. They knew how to fight when outnumbered. They knew how to hurt an enemy that thought it was safe. A young pilot named Nari-O volunteered for the most dangerous job. She would lead a squadron of stealth fighters to disable the station's defenses. Her style was wild and unpredictable. Other pilots said she was crazy, but she always completed her missions. On the night before they left, Mina stood in the observation deck looking at the stars. Somewhere out there, her sister was waiting. Somewhere out there, thousands of humans were held prisoner by aliens who thought humans were just animals to be collected and used. Deho joined her at the window. They stood in silence for a moment. Do you think we can win? Mina asked quietly. Deho looked at the stars. I do not know if we can win, but I know we have to try. Those people need us, and the collectors need to learn that humanity is not prey. We are hunters too. The next morning, the fleet departed. 20 ships jumped into quantum space, heading toward the collector way station. The journey would take 5 days. 5 days to prepare, 5 days to plan. 5 days before humanity struck back against an enemy that had been hunting them in the dark. The collectors did not know the fleet was coming. They did not know that humans had found their secret. They thought humans were simple prey, easy to harvest and control. They were about to discover how wrong they were. Because humanity had a rule that every species in the galaxy would soon learn. Touch a human colony, and the entire species will come for you with fire and fury. The collector way station hung in space like a dark spider web. It orbited a dead star, drawing power from the last dying heat. The station was massive, large enough to hold hundreds of thousands of beings. Automated weapons covered every approach. A small fleet of collector ships patrolled nearby. The collectors had built this place over centuries. They felt completely safe here. No one had ever attacked them before. Why would they? The species they harvested had no idea where their people went. By the time anyone noticed the disappearances, the collectors were already gone. But the collectors had made a mistake. They had attacked humanity without understanding what humans were capable of. Now, 20 human warships dropped out of quantum space at the edge of the system. On the Retribution's bridge, Deho watched the tactical display. The station was exactly where the probe data said it would be. The collector fleet was smaller than expected. They had 8 ships, not enough to stop a determined human attack. All ships, this is Commander Kim, Deho said into the fleet channel. We are going in. Remember the plan. Nari's fighters take out the defense grid, then we break through and board the station. Our people are in there. We are bringing them home. Nari-O sat in her fighter cockpit, her hands steady on the controls. Behind her, 15 other stealth fighters formed up. Their job was the most dangerous. They had to fly close to the station, dodging automated weapons and destroy the defense grid. If they failed, the larger ships would be torn apart. Shadow Squadron, follow me, Nari said. Stay close and stay fast. They cannot hit what they cannot track. The fighters launched. Their engines glowed blue as they accelerated toward the station. The collector ships detected them immediately and moved to intercept. But human fighters were built for speed and maneuverability. The collectors had never faced pilots like Nari before. She flew her fighter through a pattern of twists and turns that made her wingmen dizzy. Collector weapons fired streams of energy, but the shots missed by meters. Nari was always moving, never in the same place twice. She reached the station's outer defensive ring and fired missiles at the weapons platforms. Explosions bloomed across the station's hull. One by one, the defensive weapons went silent. Nari's squadron completed their run and pulled away. Behind them, the way was clear. Defense grid is down, Nari reported. Send in the heavies. The human warship surged forward. The Retribution led the charge, its weapons already firing. Junio pushed the ship to maximum speed, weaving through debris and enemy fire. Plasma cannons lit up the darkness. Railguns sent tungsten rounds screaming toward collector vessels. The collector ships tried to fight back, but they were outmatched. Their vessels were designed for harvesting, not war. They had shields and some weapons, but nothing like what humans brought to battle. Humans had fought each other for thousands of years. They knew war. They knew violence. The collectors were learning this lesson the hard way. One collector ship tried to ram the Retribution. Junio saw it coming and rolled the ship sideways. The enemy vessel passed within meters, close enough to see through its viewing ports. Then human railguns tore it apart from behind. Within 20 minutes, the collector fleet was destroyed. The human ship surrounded the station. Now came the hard part. They had to board it and find the captives. Yuna's Marines gathered in the boarding pods. Each Marine wore armor equipped with Taeyang's modified shields. They carried weapons designed for close combat. Yuna checked her gear one last time and looked at her troops. Listen up, she said. We do not know what is waiting for us in there. Stay together, watch your corners, and remember why we are here. Those people need us. Let us go get them. The boarding pods launched from multiple ships. They slammed into the station's hull and burned through the metal. Marines poured into the corridors, weapons ready, but no one shot at them. The corridors were empty. Mina was with the boarding team. She carried a scanner that tracked the life signs inside the station. Thousands of signals appeared on her screen. They were all concentrated in the lower levels. This way, she said, leading the Marines deeper into the station. The station was strange. The walls were smooth and organic-looking, like the inside of a living creature. Everything was illuminated by a dim purple light. The air smelled wrong, chemical and cold. They passed through large chambers filled with alien machinery. None of it made sense to human eyes. Finally, they reached a massive door. Taeyang, who had joined the boarding team, examined the controls. His fingers flew across alien symbols. After a moment, the door opened with a hiss. Inside was a chamber that stretched as far as they could see. Rows upon rows of stasis pods filled the space. Each pod held a person, frozen in sleep. Mina ran to the nearest pod and looked inside. A young woman floated there, her eyes closed, her body perfectly still. They are alive, Mina said, her voice shaking with relief. They are all still alive. But as the Marines spread out through the chamber, they found something else. More chambers, more stasis pods, and not all of them held humans. Dozens of different alien species were here. Some looked humanoid. Others were completely strange. All of them were prisoners. Yuna stared at the pods. How long have they been doing this? How many species have they taken? Too many, Mina whispered. She was looking at data from the chamber's computer. Some of these beings have been here for decades, some for centuries. The collectors have been harvesting intelligent life for thousands of years. Deho's voice came through their communicators. Can you free them? Taeyang was already working on the control systems. Yes, but it will take time. The stasis systems are complex. If we just shut them off, the shock could kill everyone inside. How much time? Deho asked. At least 40 minutes. Suddenly, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Red lights flashed. Mina looked at her scanner and went pale. The station is initiating self-destruct, she said. The collectors programmed it to destroy everything if they lost control. How long do we have? Yuna asked. 30 minutes. Everyone looked at Taeyang. He needed 40 minutes to safely wake the prisoners. They only had 30 before the station exploded. The engineer stared at his controls, his mind racing through calculations. "I can try to speed it up," he said, "but some of them might not survive the faster waking process." Mina made the decision. "Do it. Some chance is better than no chance." Taeyang's fingers flew across the controls. One by one, the stasis pods began to open. People inside started to wake up, gasping and confused. Marines helped them out of the pods, guiding them toward the boarding craft. Mina ran through the chamber, searching pod after pod. Then she saw her sister, floating in stasis, looking exactly as she had the last time they spoke. Mina's hands shook as she opened the pod. Her sister's eyes opened slowly. "Mina?" her sister whispered. "Where are we?" "Somewhere safe now," Mina said, tears running down her face. "Come on, we need to go." The evacuation was chaos. Thousands of people and aliens streamed toward the boarding craft. The Marines helped everyone they could. But time was running out. The station shook with internal explosions. Sections were already collapsing. Daeho found something in the station's central computer core. Files, data, information about the entire collector civilization, their homeworld location, their fleet strengths, their plans for Earth. He began downloading everything. "Commander, we need to leave now," Honyo called from the ship. "2 more minutes," Daeho said, watching the download progress. This information could save billions of lives. The countdown reached 5 minutes, 4, 3. The download completed. Daeho grabbed the data drive and ran for the boarding craft. Behind him, the station began tearing itself apart. He jumped through the airlock just as it closed. The craft launched away from the station at maximum speed. From the Retribution's bridge, everyone watched as the collector way station exploded. The dead star behind it flared bright for a moment as debris fell into its gravity well. Then everything went dark again. But the ships were filled with rescued people. Not everyone had survived. Some had been too weak. Some had died in the rapid waking process. But thousands were saved. Thousands who would have spent the rest of their lives as slaves were now free. And Daeho held a data drive that contained the secrets of an entire alien civilization. Humanity now knew where the collectors lived. They knew how many ships they had. They knew everything. The hunt was just beginning. Commander Daeho Kim stood on the bridge of the UESC Retribution and stared at the empty screen. The communication channel was dead. He had tried 17 times to contact New Jeju Colony, and 17 times he received only silence. His fingers drummed against the command chair. Something was very wrong. The year was 2547. Humans had spread across many star systems, building new homes on distant worlds. New Jeju was one of these colonies. A small moon that orbited a giant gas planet. 45,000 people lived there. They grew food and raised families. Now they were all silent. Dr. Mina Park entered the bridge. Her face was pale. She walked quickly to Daeho's side. Her sister lived on New Jeju with her husband and 2 children. Mina had not slept since the distress signal arrived 3 days ago. The message had been short and broken. Then it stopped completely. "Commander, we need to go faster," Mina said. Her voice shook slightly. Daeho looked at her with tired eyes. "We are already pushing the engines to their limit. Lieutenant Junho is doing everything he can." At the helm, Junho Lee worked the controls with steady hands. He was young but extremely skilled. His parents had died when pirates attacked their transport ship many years ago. He understood what it meant to lose people. He would get them to New Jeju as fast as possible. "Arriving in 30 minutes, Commander," Junho said. The minutes crawled by. The crew prepared for anything. Sergeant Yuna Choi checked her Marines and their weapons. She was tough and direct. Her soldiers trusted her completely. If there was danger on New Jeju, they would face it together. When the Retribution finally arrived at New Jeju, everyone expected to see damaged buildings or burning fires. Instead, they saw something much stranger. The colony looked perfect. The buildings stood intact. The streets were empty but showed no signs of war or destruction. The planetary defense grid was offline, but nothing else seemed wrong. "This does not make sense," Daeho said quietly. "Where is everyone?" Mina studied her instruments. Her hands moved quickly across the controls. She was looking for life signs, heat signatures, anything that would tell them where the colonists had gone. The scanners showed nothing. No people, no bodies, just empty buildings. "I am reading some unusual energy patterns," Mina said, "but I cannot identify what they are. We need to go down there." Daeho nodded. Sergeant Choi, prepare your team. We are going to the surface. The landing craft carried 20 Marines and Dr. Park down to the colony. They landed in the main square near the government building. The square was large and usually filled with people shopping at market stalls. Now it was completely empty. Yuna's Marines spread out in defensive positions. Their weapons were ready, but there was nothing to shoot at. The colony was like a ghost town. Shops had their doors open. Vehicles sat in the middle of streets as if their drivers had simply vanished. A child's bicycle lay on its side near a playground. Mina walked toward the nearest building. It was a restaurant. Inside, she found tables with food still on them. The meals were old now, but it was clear people had been eating when something happened. Cups of coffee sat half empty. A child's coloring book lay open with crayons scattered around it. They left in a hurry, Yuna said, joining Mina at the door. But why would they leave their food? They continued through the colony. Every building told the same story. People had been living normal lives. Then suddenly everyone disappeared. There were no signs of fighting. No bullet holes in walls. No broken windows. No blood. As they reached the central square, Yuna stopped walking. Her face went pale. In the middle of the square, spread across the ground, were thousands of items. Shoes, clothes, bags, toys, glasses, wedding rings. Personal belongings of every kind. But no people. What happened here? One of the Marines whispered. Mina knelt down and picked up a small stuffed bear. It was worn from being carried and loved. Some child had treasured this toy. Now it lay abandoned on the cold ground. She felt tears burn her eyes but pushed them back. She needed to stay focused. She needed to find answers. She pulled out her scanner and began taking readings. The unusual energy signature was stronger here. Much stronger. Whatever had happened to the colonists, it had happened right here in this square. Commander, Mina spoke into her communicator. You need to see this. All of you need to see this. Daeho came down with more crew members. They stood in silence looking at the thousands of abandoned belongings. Each item represented a person, a life, someone who had been living and breathing just days ago. We need to check the data center, Daeho said finally. Maybe the security cameras recorded something. The colony's data center was a small building near the edge of town. The power was still on. The backup generators had kept everything running. Mina accessed the main computer system and pulled up the security footage from 3 days ago. At first, the video showed normal colony life. People walked through streets. Children played. Then suddenly, at exactly 14:23 local time, the sky changed. Dark shapes appeared in the clouds. Ships. But they were unlike any human ships. They were organic-looking with smooth curves and a dark purple color that seemed to absorb light. The ships descended over the colony. Then came the beams. Bright purple light shot down from the ships, sweeping across the streets like searchlights. When the beams touched people, they stopped moving. Their bodies lifted off the ground slowly, floating upward toward the waiting ships. The video had sound. Mina heard the screaming. Heard people calling for help. Heard parents crying for their children. Then the video turned to static and went black. The bridge was completely silent when Mina sent the footage to the ship. Everyone watched it. No one spoke. Junho's hands gripped the helm controls so tightly his knuckles turned white. Yuna's jaw was clenched. Daeho's face had gone hard as stone. Someone took them, Yuna said quietly. Someone came here and took all of them. Not someone, Mina said. She was analyzing the energy readings from the purple beams. Something. This technology is not human. These energy signatures do not match anything in our database. We are looking at alien technology. Daeho stood up from his command chair. His voice was steady but filled with cold anger. Send all data to Earth Command immediately. They need to know what happened here, and prepare the ship. We are going after them. Commander, one officer said carefully. We do not know where they went. We do not know who they are? Daeho looked at the screen showing the empty colony. Then we will find out. Those people down there are our responsibility. They called for help. We heard them. Now we answer. Deep in her heart, Mina thought of her sister. Somewhere out there, in the vast darkness of space, her sister was being held by unknown aliens. She did not know if her sister was alive or dead. But she knew one thing. She would not stop searching until she found answers. The Retribution left New Jeju orbit. Behind them, the empty colony stood silent. The wind blew through abandoned streets. A child's toy rolled slowly across the empty square. and in the sky above, stars looked down on a world that had lost all its people in a single afternoon. The message went out across human space. A colony had been attacked. 45,000 people were missing, and humanity had just discovered they were not alone in the universe. The discovery would change everything, because whoever had taken those people was about to learn something important about humans. Humans protected their own, and they did not forgive those who hurt them. The rescued colonists returned to human space as heroes. News of the successful rescue spread across every human world. People celebrated in the streets. But in government buildings and military headquarters, the mood was very different. Everyone had seen the data that Commander Deho brought back. Everyone knew what was coming. President G1 Bike sat in her office looking at reports. The collector files were comprehensive and terrifying. The aliens had been harvesting intelligent species for over 3,000 years. Billions of beings had been taken from hundreds of worlds. Most of those civilizations were now extinct or hiding in fear. The collectors had a massive fleet preparing to attack Earth. Over 200 ships were gathering in deep space. They would arrive in less than 2 months. The human fleet had maybe 40 warships ready for battle. The math was simple and brutal. Humanity could not win a defensive fight. President Bayek called an emergency meeting. Admiral Sorahan attended, along with Deho and the other senior military officers. They gathered in a secure room deep underground. The weight of what they discussed would determine the future of the entire human species. "We cannot stop their fleet," one general said. "Even if we gathered every ship we have, they outnumber us 5-1. And their technology is more advanced. Then we evacuate Earth," another officer suggested. "We move as many people as we can to distant colonies." President Bayek shook her head. "We cannot evacuate 10 billion people in 2 months. And where would they go? If Earth falls, the collectors will hunt down every human colony until they have harvested us all. We need a different solution." Deho had been studying the collector data for days without sleep. Now he stood up and activated a holographic display. It showed a star map of collector space. At the center was a cluster of systems marked in red. "This is their homeworld," Deho said. "The collectors built their entire civilization around a black hole in the galactic core. They use its energy to power millions of habitats. Everything they control is run from there. Their fleet coordination, their harvesting operations, their slave labor system. Everything. How does that help us?" someone asked. Deho zoomed in on the homeworld. "The collectors have been dominant for so long that they are arrogant. Their security focuses on keeping slaves in and monitoring harvested populations. They do not expect anyone to attack them. Their homeworld defenses are designed to prevent slaves from escaping, not to stop an invasion." Admiral Sora understood immediately. "You want to attack their homeworld while their fleet is heading toward Earth?" "Yes, but not with ships. A small team. We infiltrate their central control system and plant a virus. If we can take down their automated systems, their entire civilization will collapse. Their slaves will rebel. Their ships will lose coordination. The fleet heading to Earth will have to turn back." The room was silent. What Deho proposed was almost impossible. The collector homeworld was thousands of light years away in the galactic core. Getting there would take months even with the fastest human ships, and they would have to penetrate the heart of an alien civilization alone. "The collector data includes access codes for their gate network," Deho continued. "Those gates can transport us instantly across the galaxy. We captured that technology when we destroyed their way station. With those codes, we can reach their homeworld in days, not months." President Beck looked around the table. "Who would go on this mission?" "I will," Deho said immediately. "It is my plan." "We need more than just you, Commander," Admiral Sora said. "This mission requires specialists, fighters, engineers, scientists." Over the next few days, Deho assembled his team. Mina volunteered immediately. Her knowledge of alien technology would be essential. Taeyang was the only engineer who understood collector systems well enough to create the virus. Junyo insisted on piloting the ship. Yuna and her best Marines would provide security. A special operations commander named Dongyun Nam joined them. He was a legend in the military, known for impossible missions behind enemy lines. If anyone could lead a covert infiltration of an alien homeworld, it was him. The retribution was modified with captured collector gate technology. Taeyang worked day and night to integrate the alien systems with human controls. It was dangerous work. One mistake could destroy the ship. But eventually, it was ready. While the infiltration team prepared, Admiral Sora organized a diversionary attack. The human fleet would assault a collector staging area near human space. This would draw attention away from the real mission. It would also buy time, but everyone knew it was a suicide mission. Many of those ships would not return. The night before departure, the team gathered on the Retribution. They knew the odds. They knew most of them would probably die. But they also knew what would happen if they did nothing. Earth would fall. Billions would be enslaved. Humanity would become just another harvested species, forgotten and broken. Deho spoke to his crew. "We are about to do something that no species has ever done. We are going to strike at the heart of an empire that has existed for thousands of years. The collectors think we are prey. They think we are weak. We are going to show them what humans do when someone threatens our home." Yuna raised her weapon. "For Earth, for humanity." The others echoed her words. "For Earth, for humanity." The Retribution launched from the hidden military base. They flew to the captured collector gate hidden in deep space. Taeyang entered the access codes. The gate activated, opening a tunnel of purple energy that bent space itself. "All hands prepare for gate transit," Junho announced. "This is going to be rough." The ship entered the gate. Reality twisted around them. Colors that did not exist flashed past the windows. Time seemed to stretch and compress simultaneously. The crew felt like they were being pulled apart and put back together. It lasted only seconds but felt like hours. Then they emerged. The Retribution dropped out of the gate into unknown space. Everyone rushed to the windows to look outside. What they saw took their breath away. The collector homeworld was unlike anything in human space. A massive black hole dominated the view, its accretion disk glowing with intense radiation. Around it, like a cloud of insects, millions of habitats orbited in complex patterns. Each habitat was a city, home to thousands of collectors living in luxury while slaves did all the work. The scale was overwhelming. This was a civilization that controlled dozens of star systems. They had technology that humanity could barely understand, and somewhere in this vast complex was the central control nexus that Deho needed to reach. "Sensors are detecting millions of ships," Junho said quietly. "Most are cargo vessels and harvesters, but there are also hundreds of warships. We need to avoid detection," Dongyun said. "If they discover us before we reach the nexus, this mission is over." Taeyang activated the collector transponder codes he had programmed. To any scanners, the Retribution would appear as a harvester ship returning with new captives. It was a thin disguise, but it was all they had. The ship moved slowly through the orbital network. They passed enormous factory stations where enslaved beings worked in terrible conditions. They saw prison habitats packed with captives from 100 different species. The suffering was visible even from space. Mina watched it all with cold fury. How many billions have they done this to? How long have they been causing this suffering? Too long, Deho said. But we are about to end it. It took 6 hours to reach the central nexus. It was a massive structure attached directly to the black hole's power collectors. This was the brain of the collector civilization. Every automated system, every harvester ship, every slave labor facility was controlled from here. Dongyun studied the structure. "Security looks light. They really do not expect anyone to come here. Their arrogance is our advantage," Deho said. "Everyone ready? Once we go in, there is no turning back." The team checked their equipment one last time. Weapons were loaded. The virus was ready. Disguises were in place. They would pretend to be newly arrived slaves, which would allow them to move through the facility without immediate suspicion. As the Retribution docked with the Nexus, Yuna looked at her Marines. "Remember, stay in character until we reach the core systems. Then we fight our way to the control center. No holding back. No mercy for slavers." The airlock opened. The team stepped into the heart of the enemy civilization. They were deep behind enemy lines, surrounded by billions of aliens who wanted to enslave humanity. But they carried with them something the collectors had never encountered before. Human determination, human fury, human refusal to accept defeat. The mission had begun. Earth's fate, and the fate of countless enslaved species, now depended on this small group of humans walking into the darkness. They had one chance, one opportunity to strike back, and they would not waste it. The interior of the central nexus was cold and sterile. Automated systems controlled everything through artificial intelligence that had been running for centuries. The team moved through corridors filled with collectors who barely looked at them. To these aliens, slaves were just tools, invisible, not worth noticing. Donghyun led the way using maps from the stolen data. They passed through processing centers where new captives were sorted. They saw collectors living in luxury, eating fine food while slaves starved nearby. The casual cruelty was everywhere. It made the team's blood boil, but they stayed calm. They had a mission. As they went deeper into the facility, Mina noticed something in the architecture. Ancient symbols carved into walls. Technology that looked much older than the rest. She stopped at one wall and studied it carefully. These collectors, she said quietly to Daeho, they were not always like this. These symbols tell a different story. They were once a great civilization that helped other species. But something changed. They became lazy. They became cruel. They forgot who they used to be. That makes it worse, Daeho said. They chose this. They chose to become monsters. They reached the main control center after 2 hours of careful movement. The doors were guarded by automated security systems. Taeyang examined the controls, his fingers moving quickly. He had studied collector technology for weeks. He knew their systems better than they did. The doors opened. The team slipped inside. The control center was enormous, filled with screens and computers managing billions of operations across dozens of star systems. A handful of collector technicians worked at various stations. They looked up in surprise when the team entered. Yuna and her Marines moved fast. They secured the room before the collectors could raise an alarm. One technician tried to reach a panic button. Donghyun stopped him with a quick strike. Within seconds, the room was under human control. Taeyang, you are up, Daeho said. The engineer rushed to the main computer core. This was the heart of everything. Every automated ship, every slave facility, every harvester operation was controlled from this system. Taeyang plugged in his device and began uploading the virus. The virus was brilliant. It was designed using human cyber warfare techniques that had been refined over centuries of digital conflict. The collectors had never faced anything like it. Their systems were powerful but had no defense against malicious code from within. They had never needed such defenses. No slave had ever reached this far. But humans were not slaves. Humans were warriors, and they had brought war to the collector homeworld. The virus spread through the network like wildfire. Within minutes, automated systems began failing. Harvester ships across the galaxy suddenly stopped responding to commands. Prison facilities lost power to their security systems. Factory automation ground to a halt, and the slaves noticed. In 1,000 facilities across collector space, enslaved beings realized their chains were broken. The force fields holding them were gone. The automated guards were offline. For the first time in years or decades or centuries, they were free. The rebellion began immediately. Billions of enslaved beings rose up against their captors. The collectors, who had grown soft and dependent on automation, had no idea how to fight back. They called for help, but their communication systems were failing. They tried to activate security forces, but those systems were also infected by the virus. On the Retribution's bridge, Junho monitored the chaos spreading across collector space. It is working. Their entire civilization is collapsing. But in the control center, alarms began blaring. Security forces were coming. Not automated systems, but actual collector soldiers. They knew something was wrong in the central nexus. How long until the virus is fully deployed? Daeho asked. 5 more minutes, Taeyang said, his hands flying across the controls. I need to make sure it reaches every system. If they can isolate and purge it, everything will be for nothing. Yuna positioned her Marines at the doorway. We will hold them. Just work fast. The first wave of collector security arrived. They were better armed and trained than the team expected. Plasma fire lit up the corridor. Yuna's Marines returned fire, using every bit of cover they could find. The fight was brutal and close. One Marine fell. Then another. The collectors kept coming, wave after wave. They were starting to overwhelm the human position. Yuna made a decision. She looked at Daeho one last time. Get everyone else out. I will hold them here. Sergeant, we are not leaving you, Daeho said. Yes, you are, Yuna said firmly. Someone has to make sure that virus finishes deploying. Someone has to tell Earth what we did here. That someone is you, Commander. Now go. Before Daeho could argue, Yuna pushed him toward the exit. She and her remaining Marines formed a wall of bodies between the collectors and the control center. They fought with everything they had, giving the others time to escape. Taeyang finished the upload. It is done. The virus is in every system now. They cannot stop it. Then we need to leave, Dongyun said, pulling Taeyang away from the computers. But Taeyang stopped. He looked at the controls, then at the others. The virus will destroy their automation, but I can do more. I can overload their power systems. Cause a chain reaction through the entire network around the black hole. It will cripple them for decades. How long will that take? Mina asked. Too long, Taeyang said with a sad smile. You need to go. I will stay and make sure it happens. Daeho grabbed his shoulder. Taeyang, no. We can find another way. The engineer shook his head. There is no other way, and someone has to make sure those slaving bastards can never do this again. Tell my family I died doing something that mattered. Before anyone could stop him, Taeyang sealed the door and returned to the controls. His voice came through their communicators. Go now. You have about 10 minutes before this whole section explodes. The remaining team ran. Behind them, they heard the sound of fighting as Yuna and her Marines made their last stand. Ahead of them, alarms were blaring as the facility began to tear itself apart. Taeyang's overload was working. They reached the retribution with minutes to spare. Junyo had the engines ready. The ship pulled away from the Nexus just as it exploded in a brilliant flash of light. The explosion spread through the power network, causing failures across the entire orbital complex. Daeho watched from the bridge as the collector homeworld descended into chaos. Habitats lost power. Ships drifted without control, and everywhere slaves were breaking free and turning on their masters. 3,000 years of cruelty was ending in fire and fury. The gate network is collapsing, Junho said. We need to leave now or we will be trapped here. The retribution raced toward the nearest gate. Behind them, the collector civilization was tearing itself apart. The ship entered the gate just as it began to destabilize. The journey back to human space was rougher than before. Reality twisted and buckled around them. But they made it through. When they emerged in human space, communication channels were filled with news. The collector fleet that had been heading toward Earth had turned back. Ships across the galaxy were going dark or being seized by former slaves. The great harvesting empire was collapsing. Humanity had won. Not through superior technology or greater numbers. They won through courage, determination, and the willingness to sacrifice everything to protect their own. 6 months later, the galaxy was a different place. Dozens of civilizations that had been enslaved by the collectors were now free and rebuilding. Some wanted to form alliances with humanity. Others preferred to keep their distance. But all of them remembered what humans had done. President Bayek gave a speech that was broadcast across human space and to the newly freed worlds. We did not seek this war. We wanted only to live in peace and explore the stars. But when an enemy came for us, when they took our people and treated them as property, we showed them what humanity truly is. We are protectors. We are fighters. We are survivors. And we will never ever accept slavery or tyranny. Daeho retired from the military. He had lost too many good people. Yuna and her Marines, Taeyang and his sacrifice. He spent his days helping to integrate the rescued colonists back into society. But at night he often stood looking at the stars, remembering friends who died so that billions could live free. Mina continued her work. But now she focused on helping traumatized victims from all the species the collectors had enslaved. Her sister was alive and safe. That was a blessing. But she knew thousands of families had not been so fortunate. Junho took command of a new ship. He trained young officers, teaching them not just how to fly, but why they flew. We explore space to find new worlds, he told them. But we also explore to make sure no one else faces the darkness alone. When someone calls for help, we answer. Always. Admiral Sora established a new fleet dedicated to hunting down the remaining collector fragments. Some collectors had survived the collapse and were trying to rebuild their slaving operations. Sora made sure they learned that humanity had very long memories. Throughout the galaxy, a new understanding emerged. Humanity was not like other species. They were young and aggressive. They fought wars among themselves constantly. But when an outside threat appeared, when someone attacked their people, they became something terrifying. They became unified.